Istanbul?
No, twice.
No, okay.
Günaydın. Good morning. I'm afraid I don't speak Turkish, so I'll be in English the rest of the time. I'm a long-time professor at the Wharton School, and I should say it's a pleasure to be here with a very distinguished audience. It's also a very nice time to not be in the United States, because there's lots of chaos going on, right? And the first among equals in chaos is Donald Trump, of course, who is a Wharton alumnus. In the business world, it's Elon Musk, who is also a Wharton alumnus. I have no stories about either of them. However, I did have Dr. Oz in my class. I have no stories about Dr. Oz because he did not say a single word in my entire class. So I'm going to talk about something different today. I'm going to talk about generative AI, ChatGPT, all that stuff. And here's the end of the story. I'm going to talk about how it is actually being used, not what it could do for you, okay? And the end of the story is it's harder to do than you would think, and you're being told. It's also more expensive to do than you would think, right? So I'm going to talk a little about what to keep in mind when you confront this and how to interpret all the hype that you're hearing. Okay? And I understand we're up against some time, so I will try to keep this as brief as possible. And let me begin, though, to make sure we're all on the same page as to what this is and how it works. Okay? It begins with the idea of machine learning, which was popular a few years ago. Here's how to think about that, because it's the same idea. Do you remember the phrase a few years ago called the Internet of Things? Do you remember that phrase? General Electric made this possible, right? And here's what they were thinking. They were thinking we sell machines to companies, but we stay connected with those machines now on the Internet. And what we are trying to do, because we're trying to make money, is to tell you when your machine needs help from us that we can charge you for, okay? How do we know that? We don't. So we ask our data scientists to help us figure it out. And here's what they tell us. They say, gather every piece of information you can on these machines. What do they sound like? What are the readings that we can see on our equipment? Do they smell a different way? Everything we can think of. We have no idea what will be useful. And then we see when they break. Now, you need a lot of machines in order to do this, and you have to watch them for a very long period of time. Unless you have lots of examples, you can't do this. Then what they do is they say, okay, what did it smell like just before it broke? What did it sound like just before it broke? They put all that information together into a fancy piece of mathematical software, and it comes out with this model. And the model is the algorithm. You remember that expression? And the algorithm says when it smells like this, when it sounds like this, it's about to break. And then we'll call you and we can sell you a solution. Okay? That's what machine learning does. It's looking for patterns about when something is going to break, when an employee will be a good one, a good hire. Prediction, that's what it does. Large language models do the same thing, they just do it with data. If you're on your cell phone, for example, and you're typing something, and you discover that it adds a word for you, it's doing the same thing. It's saying when other people have used these same words that you use, what usually comes next, right? That's what it's doing. That's what large language models are doing, right? That's the difference between them and machine learning. The big change came with something that Google created, software called Transformer. And this will do this not with individual words, it will do it with sentences. So it will look at your data and your text and say, you've written this, what sentence usually comes next? How does it learn this? It goes to the internet and looks at millions and millions of sentences and says, this one typically comes next, okay? And that's how it's able to write things that sound good. It's not creating anything new. It is just reporting out a typical average conversation from the internet. And that's what large language models do when they write essays or anything. They can now do it with paragraphs. When you've written a paragraph like this, what usually comes next, right? Now, it's not creating anything original, right? It is just repeating things that have been said already. So this is where there's a lot of things we have to worry about. What data is it using? What text is it using to generate this? If I'm asking for advice on my heart, for example, right? I want to make sure that what it is writing comes from medical journals. That would be good. Rather than from what my sister says in her chat page, right? Right now, unless you set up those guardrails, though, you don't know where that is coming from. So you can't just rely on what it's going to say and assume it's sensible. You have to first put these guardrails in. What are the problems in using it in work, okay? And I'd like you to think back for a minute to driverless cars. Remember that? And you may remember that the people who developed driverless cars told us by 2019, they would have taken over truck driving. Now, you may not remember this but every major consulting company made this claim. McKinsey, Bain, Boston Consult, everybody. They had these reports saying truck drivers are going to be out of a job, right? You know what they did with those reports? They took them down off their website because they were all wrong. Now, why were they wrong? Because they were telling you what is possible under the perfect conditions, right? They weren't telling you what is probable and useful. So with driverless cars, for example, it was true that if every car was driverless, it could work pretty well. What they didn't tell you is as soon as you have people driving cars along with driverless cars, then you get a lot of problems that have yet to be solved because people don't act like robots, right? So I remember talking to somebody about this, and they said, well, we have a solution to that. I said, what's your solution? They said, we'll have one set of roads just for driverless cars and another set of roads just for people driving them. Oh, that's simple. Let's just create two entire highway systems. Right? It's impossible, just crazy, right? How do you insure driverless cars? Somebody has to figure out the liability and the insurance. Nobody thought about any of these issues, right? So once we started to try to do it, we discovered it was way too complicated. I have never seen a driverless truck. I mean, I'm sure they're out there someplace, but it has not taken over. The predictions were completely and universally wrong. With generative AI, we're probably on something like that, in that the hype is unbelievably disconnected from the reality. So what do we know about efforts to use it right now, right? So the efforts to use it right now, there was a nice study done at the Boston Consulting Group with their own consultants using ChatGPT, which is the most famous of the large language models, but is only one of many. Right? What they found is that it really helped with some things. It actually slowed other things down. Why? Because it produces these results that you have to check and figure out, why did it say that? This doesn't sound right to me. A study done with computer programmers that we thought would be the best way to use it, right? Well, it turns out we have long had tools that help computer programmers program by telling you, here's code that has already been written for a problem like yours, right? So this is not completely new there. What they discovered was that it helped with some things and it hurt with others because of all this checking people had to do afterwards, right? The last study I want to tell you about is the most important for you. And this is a study where they gave managers the opportunity, this is a year ago now, right, when it was first out, to use ChatGPT to write their reports in their company, okay? They had these choices. First choice, you could use it or not, okay? What did they do? They used it, okay? It's fine. The second is you could use it by asking it to write a report, and then you could edit it and check it and send it in. Or you could write a report, give it to ChatGPT, and it would edit and check it, and then you could send it in. Or you could just send it in. What do you think they did? They just sent it in. They didn't check, ChatGPT didn't check, boom, it just went in. Why? Because it saves them the most time. But for the employer, you've now got a lot of risk because they have a report going in that no one has checked to see whether it makes any sense or not. Then this is going to be a management problem that we have to think about. How are we going to deal with the fact that it does make people's jobs possibly easier, but also makes their output possibly worse, right? So let's talk about these issues. Here are 3 things to think about. Then I'm going to tell you a story about a company that introduced this and how it went, okay? The first thing to think about is that it can do lots of things that don't need being done. So, for example, you'll hear them say, it could write all your letters back to your customers. Yes, it could, but no one is writing those letters now. They're all standard form letters that your lawyers have checked, and off they go. You don't need that being done, you know? Just like with driverless cars, I have in my garage an old Porsche. I don't drive it that much. I just go out and look at it, mainly. Partly because my wife will not sit in it. She thinks it's too tiny, so we don't drive it very often. I would not want a robot to drive that car for me. I didn't buy it to have a robot drive me around, right? Some things don't need to be done. Let me give you this story about Air Canada. One of the things that you hear is that it could do a great job with your chatbots. Customers call up with questions, and it could do a better job than what you're doing now, answering their questions. So Air Canada put ChatGPT or something like it into their chatbots, and the customers loved it. The service was great. The problem was Air Canada hated it because it was giving customers things that made the customers happy, but the company unhappy. Yes, you get a refund. Yes, sure, you get a free ticket. We'll give you a discount here. And the company was going broke with ChatGPT helping the customers. So what Air Canada did is it tried to take all those deals back, and the customers sued them. And Air Canada said to the court, look, ChatGPT is autonomous, it's not us, you know. And the judge said, ha, 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 very funny. Of course, it's you. And they had to give up and give all those discounts and things, right? So when you give something control and it can exercise responses that you don't know about, you probably don't want that, right? So the second issue here, you have to check, as we said before, all the output. Anything that it is produced, you have to check. Now, it may be one thing if you're just writing a letter to somebody, but if you're using it to make a strategic business decision, would you bet your decision on what ChatGPT tells you? You should not, right? Somebody who really understands the issue at the very least has to check it and arguably use it. And ChatGPT has no judgment, right? It doesn't know what you've done before. It doesn't know what doesn't make sense for your business. So you still need the experts. Maybe it would be really good as a way to help write a report. Maybe that would be really useful, but you still need people who have to validate it and say, yeah, this makes sense, or no, this doesn't make sense. You still need the experts around. Here's something they're not telling you. One of the problems with these large language models is that you get a different answer every time you ask even the same question. So why does that matter for you folks in the top jobs? Well, let's say you have something done, a report or something in your company, and it has implications that somebody in your company doesn't like. So what they do is they go to ChatGPT and they ask ChatGPT to generate a report that gives you a different answer. And I guarantee you can get it to give you almost any answer you want. You just change the prompt a little bit, it gives you a different answer. If you go to a different large language model, it will give you yet another answer. If I go back to the same large language model tomorrow with the same question, I get a different answer. Why is that? Because it's moving through the internet to pick up the answer, and the internet changes every day. So you have to figure out which of these responses do I want to use and rely on. I don't know how you figure that out. There's nobody you can quiz and say, how did you come up with this one, ChatGPT? And even the people who program them can't tell you, right? So you have a problem with that because they don't give you the same answer every time. This is a robustness problem, right? What they're really good at for us is writing term papers. And for students, the problem for us is students are using them to write term papers. They're not learning anything. One of my colleagues, I discovered, is using ChatGPT to grade the term papers. So think how time-saving this is. Students write their papers using ChatGPT. We grade them using ChatGPT. We could all just go to the beach. This is a big problem we got to figure out, right, as how to deal with this issue here. Now, let's talk about automating jobs, and let me tell you this story, and then we'll wrap up after this, okay? This is a company, an insurance company, and here's the problem they had. They had a staff of 40 people. When claims would come in, they come in paper in envelopes. So they would open the envelope, look at the sheet, see what it is. Is this a claim? Is it an appeal? Is it more evidence? They got to figure that out. And then they scan them, and they have to copy the data from that form to another screen, put it in their own company's appropriate form, right? 40 people doing this, about 5,000 documents or so a day, and the quality is bad. This is a big problem. Because the work is so boring, people just aren't paying attention to it. So here's what they do. They say this is a perfect case where we could automate white-collar work using large language models. They have a team of 6 people, right? And you can see the data, the figures down here. It's not cheap. They were paying these 6 people for about a year to get this thing to work. They were paying a vendor $500,000 upfront for advice on the large language models to use. Then they're paying $200,000 per month to use these tools later on, right? So this is not cheap. Here's what they discovered. They started this out, and they discovered that one of the large language models was really good at doing this. It did a very good job figuring out what the form was, extracting the data, putting it into the company's form. Great. The problem was it was so expensive to use that form that it was cheaper to go back to the employees and do it. So yes, could it do it? Yes. Could it do it well? Yes. But it was too expensive to use. You never hear that story, right? It's too expensive to use. So here's what they did. This was very smart. They said, let's find the cheapest tool we can use. And this was a simple optical character reader, you know, the kind of thing that reads resumes for words and things. And they started with that. And they discovered that would work for about half of the forms. Half, okay? And then what they did is they took the second half that it didn't work for, and they used cheap large language model. And that would work for about the next 40% or so. And then they still had, at the very end, 3% they couldn't figure out. They turned that over to the most expensive large language model, right? And this is a very smart consultant solution here, but it was stacking 3 different types of software in order to make it economically feasible to do. Now, here's the punchline on this, right? Headcount fell, but only by 20%, because they find mistakes, they have to go back into the forms, figure out what was wrong, and re-enter it. So headcount only fell by 20%, right? That's good news if you're an employee, but it didn't save that much labor to do this. Costs fell by 15%, though. It wasn't a revolution, right? Quality was up, lots of other nice things, but here's the thing. If you looked at this from a finance perspective, you would see that the internal rate of return on this was negative, right? Because it cost so much to get the thing going in the first place. Now, you may say, well, but it's worked now forever. It doesn't work forever, because every time the forms change, you have to go back and do the reprogramming, right? So you could probably figure this will work for 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe, something like that. It's still really expensive. Now, maybe they could justify this, quality improvements and other sorts of things, but it was not an easy thing to do. It was an expensive thing to do. Was it worth it? They think so. Financially, I know they did not do this analysis that I just did for you up here, and it might not be completely right, but I think it's pretty right here. Why is it that you hear so much about this, particularly from CFOs? Because they think it's free, because ChatGPT is free. It's not free. These companies like OpenAI, they're in the business of making money. They're going to stop giving away these things, and the ones that you're seeing now are the ones that don't do very much. The really good ones are really expensive, right? And they also think it cuts jobs, not clear how it's going to cut jobs. To do this well is job by job by job, and it requires a lot of time to do that, right? So let me skip to the end here. This is just one little piece of data that I collected from the US about companies, and are they actually using it? And the bottom line here is, have you actually eliminated any jobs because of this? And you can see the answer here was less than 1% of companies said they had actually eliminated any jobs with this, okay? Let me just get to the conclusion here at the end, what I think you ought to do. The first thing is, if you don't have them already, you need acceptable use policies in your company that says, okay, here's how you can use these tools. And one of those rules has to be, have you checked this output that you're about to pass along? You do need people trained on how to use these, mainly about what the risks are. I would think carefully about whether for a while you need a central office to do all this stuff. You don't need to hire data scientists to do this. You should hire librarians. The reason is they're cheap, cheaper than data scientists. And what you really need to know is this good data or not that we're using? Is this guardrail set up the right way to keep out the wrong kind of information? That's really what you need here, right? So it's a fabulous tool. It does all kinds of things that are really quite remarkable. Its ability to replace humans, not there yet, right? And to make it work case by case, don't expect it to be easy, don't expect it to be cheap, right? So let me get off the stage here and let you folks continue on with, and I hope with the most important part here, which I'm going to hang around afterwards, happy to talk to you, and I'm looking for restaurant recommendations because I'm hanging around Istanbul for a couple of days. Thank you all very much.
Evet, Profesör Capelli'ye çok teşekkür ediyoruz ve onun sunumundan sonra CEO Council buluşmasının, 4. buluşmasının sonuna geliyoruz. Sonuna kadar kaldığınız ve alkışladığınız için sizlere çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Alarko, Alternatif Bank, iVans, Faturalab, Fixcloud, Inspark ve Petrol Ofisi'ne katkıları ve destekleri için çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Sağlıkla kalın efendim, hoşça kalın. Yeni yılda inşallah bütün dilekleriniz kabul olsun. Hepinize iyi hafta sonları diliyorum.